Hello, welcome to the EPG Pachala program in linguistics. I am Pramod Pandey, Center for Linguistics, Jawaharlal Nehru University. We will be discussing today the physical anatomy of speech in Module 4 of the course Introduction to Phonetics and Phonology. The purpose is to give an overview of the physical anatomy to the students and also to give an idea of the multiple possibilities in the production of speech that are given to us in our physiology and which is responsible for the variation in speech sounds. We will take a look at the speech processes which are involved in speech production and focus on the Airstream speech process in this module. The other speech processes will be taken up in the following modules. When we look at the physical anatomy of speech, it is interesting to find that none of the articulators of speech, organs of speech, is exclusively involved in the production of speech. Thus, the lips are used for eating and drinking, the tongue for tasting and manipulating food in the mouth, the nose for breathing, the velum for manipulating the air coming out from the lungs and the vocal cords to allow it to pass through the oral cavity or the nasal cavity, the vocal cords to prevent foreign particles from entering into the human body. Now, all of these organs are also involved in speech, in the production of speech. It appears then that the evolution of speech is quite late in the evolution of the human species. Besides, there is nothing unique to the system of language that for which the human body is preordained. A simplistic account of the production of speech can be given like this. The air is generated from the lungs. It passes out through the larynx and the pharynx, is modulated in the vocal tract and is released through the mouth or the nasal cavity or both. We take a look at the main articulators involved in speech production. Of all the parts of the human vocal apparatus, the lungs are the ones which are crucially involved in generating airstream. The airstream that is used in producing sounds in all human languages comes from the lungs. In addition, the air may come from other sources, but air from the lungs is common to all human languages. The air can pass either outside the mouth or it can be brought in. That is, when it is exhaled and when it is inhaled. Speech sounds can be produced both ways, but it just so happens that the speech sounds that are produced by the air passing from the lungs are usually those mainly which are produced by the air going outward, that is when the air is exhaled. The air passes through the larynx, which is responsible for the production of different types of speech sounds here by the vocal cords which take place different positions. Once the air passes out from the larynx, it goes through pharynx and then meets with various modifications in the vocal tract in the oral cavity. So there are three main processes which are related to production of speech: respiration, phonation, and resonance. The main parts of the articulatory system are the vocal cords at one end, the lips at the other end. In between we have the pharyngeal wall, the velum, that is the soft palate, the hard palate, the alveolar ridge, and the teeth. take a look at the diagram. With the help of these articulators, there are various types of speech sounds produced at different places in the mouth. These are known as places of articulation. We will discuss them in greater detail in a later module, but because they are necessary and will be referred to time and again in the course of the discussion of these modules, so we take a look at them in the chart. In the chart, there are three columns, one of places, the other of articulators, and the third one of examples. The places are the ones which we refer to as places of articulation, and then the articulators are the ones which are involved in producing speech sounds in those places, and we have some examples from English and some Indic languages illustrating those different places of articulation. Notice that in the production of speech sounds at each place of articulation, there are two articulators in a majority of the cases. Thus, in for labiodental sounds, we have the lower lip and the upper teeth. For dental, we have the tip and the blade of the tongue and teeth, and so on. There are only two places of articulation for which we do not have these two sets, but we have one single set. These are the lips and the vocal cords. The way these articulators are listed, one of them is assumed to be an active articulator and the other is a passive articulator. The active articulator is the one which moves, for example, the lower lip, and the passive articulator is the one which remains static, passive, for example, the teeth. Thus, and the tongue, for example, is an active articulator, but the alveolar ridge, the hard palate are passive articulators. Let's go through them quickly. The bilabial place of articulation, produced by the lips, as in pin, ball, English. Labiodental, produced with the lower lip and the upper teeth. Fit, fine. Dental place of articulation, produced with the tip and blade of the tongue against the teeth. For example, the English think, Hindi, thali, both are dental sounds. Then we have alveolar sounds in English, produced by the tip of the tongue and alveolar ridge, such as let and sit and so on. We have palatoalveolar sounds produced by the front of the tongue plus rear part of the alveolar ridge, like cha and ja. We have velar sounds which are produced by the back of the tongue and the soft palate or the velum. The retroflex produced by the tip of the tongue curled back and the hard palate. The palatal sounds produced by the front of the tongue and the hard palate. The velar sound produced by the back of the tongue, the soft palate. Uvular sound produced by the back of the tongue plus uvula. Pharyngeal sounds produced by the root of the tongue, pharyngeal wall. Epiglottal sounds produced by the root of the tongue and the epiglottis. Glottal sounds are produced by the vocal cords. When you look at the consonant chart in the full IPA chart, sorry, I've closed the eyes. When we look at the consonant chart in the IPA chart, you will find that the places of articulation are given in the columns. So all these places of articulation which we have just dealt with are given in those specific columns. If a certain place of articulation is missing, it is because the sounds produced in those places are not as common as the sound produced in other places. When we consider how the sounds of speech are produced in all the world languages, we find that there are four main processes of speech. One the airstream process, 2, the phonation process, 3, the oronasal process, and 4th, the articulatory process. Each of them deals with the different parts of the vocal apparatus. The airstream process deals with the airstream generated mainly from the lungs and from some other parts of the vocal tract. The phonation process deals with the larynx. The oronasal process deals with the velum being raised or lowered, and the articulatory process deals with the various kinds of modifications that are made in the vocal tract from the pharyngeal wall up to the lips. We will start with the airstream process here, and then in the following modules we'll take a look at the other processes of speech. There are 3 main types of speech processes, namely pulmonic, glottalic, and velaric. The names of these airstream processes are given on the basis of their sources: the lungs, the glottis in the larynx, and the velum. The name pulmonic is taken from the Latin adjective for the English noun lungs. Glottalic deals with the airstream manipulated by the larynx, which is being pushed up and down, and the velaric is produced by the manipulation of the velum, the soft palate in the vocal tract. The airstream that is generated by these organs moves in 2 directions: outward, it's called egressive, or inward, called ingressive. As there are 3 main sources of airstream, namely pulmonic, glottalic, and velaric, and 2 directions, namely egressive and ingressive, we expect there to be 6 main airstream processes. However, we find that there are in fact mainly 4 main airstream processes that are responsible for the production of speech sounds, as you see on the chart. Thus, only egressive sounds generated by the lungs are responsible for the production of speech sounds, called pulmonic egressive. The glottalic speech sounds are both egressive and ingressive, and the velaric speech sounds are those which are only ingressive. Thus, whereas the pulmonic sounds are not ingressive, the velaric sounds are not egressive. There are only thus 4 types of sounds produced by the airstream. The pulmonic egressive sounds are produced by the air which flows out of the mouth. It passes through the larynx. The larynx tries to modulate the passing out of the airstream by taking up different positions and thus producing different types of sounds. The airstream then passes out through the mouth and through the nasal cavity, giving rise to oral and nasal sounds. The glottalic airstream produces 2 types of sounds. The aggressive glottalic airstream produces a type of speech sound called ejectives, and the ingressive glottalic airstream produces a type of sounds called implosives. The production process is like this. The glottis is closed, so the larynx is tightly shut. There is also an obstruction in the oral cavity somewhere, which is tightly shut. The air which is trapped inside the larynx and the other part in the pharynx or in the oral cavity, that remains constant until the larynx is either pushed up or pushed down. When the larynx is pushed up and the articulators are released, we get an ejective type sound. And when the larynx is pulled down and then the articulators are released, we get implosive sounds. Listen to these sounds given there. You also have all these sounds available on the website that is given in the references for you. We suggest you go to the website, to the link, and listen to these sounds and practice them. Some of these sounds are being given here for you to listen to and practice. A click is produced this way. The back of the tongue makes a contact with the dorsum, the upper part of the mouth, and at the same time the front of the tongue also closes. Both are closed completely. Now when the tongue is retracted, in the process of retraction, as the front of the mouth opens slightly, the air outside is sucked in, and as the velum is released, we hear a click-like sound. Like different types of clicks are produced by human beings. Only some of them are found to be used as speech sounds. Others are used for other paralinguistic purposes, such as we find meaning no. We use sounds such as for talking to babies or animals and so on. But there are languages in which we know that clicks are used as speech sounds. Notice that the symbols used for clicks are not like those which are used for other types of sounds. They don't make use of alphabets, but other symbols given on the screen. Of the 4 types of Airstream processes, only 2 types are involved in the production of speech sounds among Indic languages, namely the pulmonic aggressive and implosive sounds. Implosive sounds are commonly found in Sindhi and some of its dialects, such as Kutchi. The pulmonic aggressive sounds, as we said before, are found in all human languages. Sounds that are produced by the larynx going up, that is aggressive glottalic airstream, and the velaric airstream called clicks. So these sounds, ejectives and clicks, are found in languages in Africa and America very commonly. To sum up, we began with discussing the human anatomy of speech and then moved on to take up Airstream processes for detailed discussion. We suggest that you go through the links where you find the various types of speech sounds produced by the Airstream mechanism. Try and practice. Listen to them and produce them. You should be doing this time and over again in order to be able to hear them distinctly and produce them distinctly. This is extremely important for students of phonology. Articulatory phonetics provides a very strong basis for understanding other branches of phonetics, such as acoustic phonetics and auditory phonetics. Thank you.